Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star. Got the Leafs coming off a win last night, the Raptors coming off a win last night. Lots of action in the NFL this weekend. Ross Atkins, of course, was speaking yesterday, and, internal improvement, and we'll see. We'll see what comes with the Jays.
What do you make of that, Dave? Internal improvement. What do you make of that?
Well, I love how you go from we're putting all the chips in on Shohei Ohtani to no, we're good. We're good the way we are.
Right.
We don't that $700 million we're going to spend. Forget about that. We're not spending any more. We're good. We're good the way we are, guys.
Everything's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's all good.
You know what else I hate? I hate when a GM describes the process of being in on a big cat and then losing it, but still saying, "Man, the experience was like." No, there was nothing good. It sucked.
It's embarrassing.
You didn't get them.
It's small.
You know what I mean? Every
minded.
GM's like, to be involved in something like that and to have everyone on board and to be in the process, and we were right there. You didn't. It's a loser mentality, as Pat Quinn would say. You didn't get them, so it didn't work. Everything about that sucked.
Yeah, I agree. That was the small market in Ross Atkins coming out, and because it's one thing to admit, everyone knows you're in on it. And if you said, hey, we would have loved to have them, we gave it our best, but we move on, perfect. But when you start saying...
Why do you refer to them as small market? They're top 15 payroll.
I'm not saying they are. What I'm saying is the way Ross Atkins described that
just the mentality.
Exactly. He was super excited. He was really into us. He was digging us, and he really wanted... No, like that's what Cleveland would try to say to make themselves feel better about themselves. Up here... I don't think it lands nearly as well, and it shouldn't be a part of the mentality.
Yeah.
You do have a top 10 payroll.
There's an outside chance they use the Jays to squeeze another $100 million out of the Dodgers.
Exactly. So I'm with you. Don't even go down that road. Don't even pretend as if it was that close and he was really into us. And I'm telling you, he was about to swipe right, and at the last second he swiped left. Just say, we tried. We wish him all the best in L.A. We're moving on. We're going to win ball games. Well, thank you very much.
To your point, I don't think there's an outside chance that they used them. I think they used them. I mean, they knew they couldn't use, Ohtani's camp could not use the New York teams, especially Cohen and the Mets, because
they used the Giants, Dave, and the Cubs to get to a certain level, and then they used the Jays to get to the next level, and there's your $700 million.
Right. And they were worried that they used Cohen, that Cohen would say, okay, 700, here's $1 billion. Because Steve Cohen might just do that, right? Just say, I will make you an offer that you cannot possibly refuse, even though you don't want to play on the East Coast. But to use the Jays was safer, right? They knew the Jays wouldn't do that. And it sounded sort of plausible because he played in the Dome in Japan, and here's Toronto with a dome that sort of reminds him of the Sapporo Dome and all that stuff. There was some plausible theories that why might he, join the Jays? He played in northern Japan. It's kind of similar climate, and you could sort of buy it, but Doug. I mean, I think we all know where he was going to the Dodgers, and he went to the Dodgers.
In retrospect, it all makes sense that he ends up with the Dodgers, and I think even the way the Dodgers were approaching it was, the management was a little bit hesitant, but we all saw Dave Roberts be like, I met with a guy. I was like, that was Roberts basically saying, I know he's coming here. Like, I have no issues with talking about that publicly because we know he's coming here.
Remember how much he was scolded for that?
Yeah.
It was like, oh, man, you said you talked to him? Come on. He likes privacy.
Yeah. And
I don't think Ohtani cared that Dave Roberts said that.
Well, he didn't care because it was the Dodgers, and he wanted to go to the Dodgers. And when you're the Dodgers, you're a brand like that, you don't have to placate to the player all the time. Obviously, you want to be respectful, but you're still so secure in who you are that you're like, this is what we're doing, man.
Right.
And he's still going to come. And guess what? He still did. But, Atkins trying to explain how, Canada was a buck. I don't even know. It's unnecessary.
Feschuk,
just move on, and it's over now.
Do you not think Ross, he needs a bit of a PR adjustment with some of the stuff, the way he delivers the message? It's like the internal improvement and the way he kind of skirted around what happened in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. The way it's coming across to the fan base, and I'm not a diehard Jays fan, I just like watching them on TV. It's what I do in the summertime. But the fans, it's driving the fans nuts, his messaging. And he's got to fix it, or they're really going to hate his guts.
Yeah. Well, they had a great PR guy in there, our guy Griff. And Griff's not there anymore. Like, that might tell you something.
Yeah, you're right. Now Griff is reporting on what's being said and what is not being said at this point. And listen, maybe it's a negotiating tactic where Ross is trying to convince free agents, we're not in on you, we're all good here, to try to lower the price. I'll believe that when I see it. But as of now, the Jays are what they are, and they move on. And before you know it, spring training will be here. But as for the Maple Leafs, they're off today, off tomorrow, back in action in San Jose on Saturday. A lot going on around the league, including All-Star announcements coming up later this afternoon. The William Nylander contract watch continues. Joining us here on the Maple Twitter hotline, here's our TSN hockey insider, Pierre LeBrun. How you doing, Pierre?
All right.
Are you excited for some contract talk here in Toronto, Pierre? Where are we at here with William Nylander?
I like to say to my friends sometimes, I started in this business 29 years ago to cover the game of hockey, the sport.
Yes.
Like what happens on the ice. And I basically made my career more about the business side of hockey. But that's okay because it's important. Yeah. And yes, it's exciting times for the Leafs on and off the ice as they try to hammer down a deal with William Nylander.
Yeah. And obviously you've been reporting others. Like it's moving in that direction. And, the numbers are going to be what they are, and we can cross that bridge when we get to it. But if and when this happens, that'll be a quick commitment from Brad Treliving to Auston Matthews to William Nylander. Like, do we just roll this over to the next guy? Or, like, at some point, would you expect this front office to decide we can't continue to just pay and pay and pay so few players?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, first, let's let the Leafs get through this negotiation. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do think they'll extend Nylander. I think it's going to get done, whether that's days or weeks, we'll see. But it's funny how, and I get it. I mean, you're already analyzing like it's done. I mean, nothing's done until it's done. Yep. But both sides are certainly trying to hammer that away. I get where you're coming from. I mean, one of the things that, I think of with, the core of this team and whether or not last summer should have been the moment where before the no trade clause kicks in for Mitch Marner, whether you have a deeper look at the core. Certainly, if they don't finally go deep in the playoffs this year, you can certainly look back and say that was a missed opportunity. But I also think it underlines why the drama in the GM change, it was maybe the worst summer of all for it to happen. Because I don't blame Brad Treliving one bit for, after being on a job for a couple of weeks, not wanting to blow up a core that he's trying to get to know. I mean, I don't know a lot of GMs that would have. So my point is that if people are already ready to pounce at this, if the Leafs don't go deep in these playoffs, why are we keep signing these guys? And, I mean, that's why last summer was so big in terms of the breakup between Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan. Because last summer, as Dubas himself in his last public comments as Leafs GM said, maybe it's time to look at it, right? That's what he said in his last comments as Leafs GM. He was ready to look at it. But I certainly, if I'm Brad Treliving and I just became Leafs GM, man, how many people do you think have the gumption to come in and trade a Marner or trade a Nylander last summer after barely knowing these guys?
Pierre, what's so difficult about it? If it's like they're high-priced players, there's no flexibility, and they're great human beings, they're great people, they're great players, but they have no flexibility and they don't win. So as an executive in the NHL, shouldn't that make it somewhat easy to make that decision? I don't know. Unless the mandate is they sell jerseys and they're great and they fill the rink and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. We discussed Vancouver last year where Bo Horvat was the captain of the team. He brought up a number. They said, no thanks. They traded him. Now they're the best team in the West. It's not that difficult to do.
Right. Yeah, I see where you're coming from, O-Dog, for sure. And again...
And Pierre, by the way, that's not where I'm coming from. I'm just talking about what is going on. It's just the idea of there's still no flexibility, and they still haven't won more than one round. I just don't know. It's weird to stay committed to that, so committed to that.
And the other example would be every year this is a 100-point-plus team that gives itself a chance. Yeah. And it hasn't happened, but they are that team where you can say every year, okay, give me 8 teams that I think have a chance. They're among the 8. And I know what you're going to say. That's not good enough because at some point you have to deliver on that promise. But the alternative of not being that is the 18-wheeler off the track that preceded it. And I don't know. Again, to me, last summer felt like the moment that if you truly no longer believe in this core, you made the moves. Because now, I mean, to me, you have to sign Nylander. He's become such a special player on this team that I think I don't know. I just don't think you can replace him July 1st. The moment was probably last summer where you know that the clock's ticking on and Marner is no move. What are we doing here? What are we doing? That was the moment.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Pierre. But the moment's been gone. And so let's just say this deal does get done, Pierre. And I understand it's not done until it's done, but there's all kinds of speculation. It's going to be a deal, multi-year deal in the $11 million range. That'll mean there are 11 players by my count, according to Cap Friendly, making $11 million or more next year, and the Leafs will have 4 of them, which is pretty amazing in a 32-team league. They get the market corner on $11 million plus guys for sure, but are any of these guys tradable next year, like next summer? Let's say it goes again and they, another swing and a miss in the playoffs. How would you see Tree Living proceeding with 4 guys taking up this much room in the cap and it's just not working out? Is there a market for any of these guys, and who would you think would be the most likely to be shipped?
Well, there's definitely a market, but it's not about that, Dave. I mean, the question is, would anyone, depending on how the playoffs go, would any of them want to get moved? Because they now control their fate. All about the players now. They have the full no move, all of them, including Tavares. Have to mention him because he's got a year left at $11 million next year, and that's truly the contract that actually sticks out. Even though, again, what else can you ask for from him in terms of being a captain? He's been terrific, but he's overpaid, and now that's going to be even more glaring. If and when this Nylander extension gets done. You were there, Dave. I asked Tavares last year on clean-out day after they got eliminated by Florida, would you be willing to waive? And I thought John Tavares was very clear at that moment in his desire not to waive. And that's his right. I mean, why would he? He came here to play at home, and he signed in good faith. So let's eliminate Tavares. Doesn't look like that happens. Then you got Marner, who has a year left on his deal. That's an interesting one because you would think he would want to find some clarity on his future this summer with the year left on his deal. Does that provide a window either way? Either we're committed long-term again, here's the number, or if those negotiations don't go as well, would he be open to a move? Right now, I find it hard to believe. He loves being a Leaf, But that's one where I would say to you, let's see how that negotiation goes.
With Pierre LeBrun, our TSN Hockey Insider. So in terms of league news, the All-Star Game is here. It's coming to Toronto. It'll be here in a month.
So exciting.
Very exciting stuff. And I'm not one to waste a lot of energy on the All-Star Game. I do love that they're bringing the draft back. I think that's great. I love that they're adjusting the skills competition. I think there's potential there. The idea, and I've been saying this for forever, the idea that every team is represented to me is so amateur and so ridiculous.
Pathetic.
It's so stupid. There is no reason the San Jose Sharks have an all-star represented in Toronto. And I know what people are going to say, well, if Chicago's awful, but you want Bedard there, and I'm assuming Bedard will get there, he can still get there as an all-star. The fans will vote him in because of who he is. People will still want him there, or you make exceptions if need be. But I can't understand why the league would not want to drive stars. That's what this is. It's in the name. It's the All-Star Game. The idea that all 32 teams are represented. Why do they continue to insist on doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think why they want every team logo represented. I'm totally with you guys.
But why, Pierre? What does it do what does it do for the game to say that there's a San Jose player there? Doesn't do anything.
I hope you guys know where I've stood on All-Star my entire career, right? Mm-hmm. I've wanted this weekend scrapped from the entire calendar forever. So It's hard for me to go deep on cosmetic changes. It's like putting lipstick on a pig.
Right.
I mean, I can't believe there still is an All-Star game. Because, I see my dogs agree with me.
Yeah.
Because it's it has not made sense for so long based on what the players want out of it, based on, not wanting to get injured. It's been, honestly, it's been an embarrassment for the league for a long time. But they just keep trying to find ways where they do something different. I'm totally with you. If you're still going to have this event, bring the best players, period, and don't worry about who they play for. Yeah. Especially when the game's going to be in Toronto. You should have as many Leaf stars as possible represented. No question about it. But, again, I honestly, aside from the need to, be good to sponsors and all your corporate friends around the league, which I get. We're all grown ups. We understand how the business works. And I will say, like, my own kids are excited about skills. They've been asking me, how the skills format's going to work. So there's really young fans that dig that part of it. But the game part has been no good forever, period.
Yeah. And that's not going to change. I don't expect it will. And I'm not sure it would with stars. But it's just, if you're going to commit to it, it's more about it going viral for you, the big moments, the announcements. We live in a social media world, and, you could use the Leafs as an example. Clearly, it should be Matthews and Nylander should be announced today. Instead, it's only going to be one of them. You should always have McKinnon and McCarr should both be there. Patterson and Hughes and
guys
TJ
are
Miller.
losing their spots.
They should all be there.
One.
Exactly, like with Columbus. Why? Like we don't need to go down the list of all the different teams that need to represent. But it's silly.
And then you guys know this, but because this has been going on for years. But there's also this awkward dance where people from the league's hockey ops kind of feel out certain players through their GM about, do you really want to come? Because we're not going to announce you if you're not going to come. And then sometimes a player says, I've played enough of those. I'm just going to go to the Bahamas and relax, which, by the way, totally is right. But when the player doesn't get announced, everyone in the fan base gets upset and no one realizes, well, it's because he actually begged out. And then there's all this awkward, for a guy like me, for example, do you want to make that call and find out it's because he begged? You know what I mean?
Right,
this whole thing about All-Star, it's like, why are we wasting energy on all this? Listen, I get it. It is what it is. I think the Leafs are going to do a pretty outstanding job hosting it along with the league, but I find it difficult to get emotionally invested in how do we fix this thing, because my fix is quite different from most people.
Yeah. No, yours is abolish the whole thing. I have an appreciation for that. That's that. And again, it's not going to happen likely because other leagues do it. There's a history to it and the corporate sponsors. And, for the local markets, it means something. In Toronto, it means something. Go ahead, Dave. What do you got?
I was just going to say, does the $1 million prize, Pierre, does that change anything for you? Or if not for you, then does it change anything for the players? Because, $1 million is $1 million, and it's a hard cap league, man. It's hard to make extra money.
For sure. It doesn't change anything for me, but I think it will for the players involved that night. No question. Yeah, man. They're human.
Absolutely.
Big time money, man. And especially because you may get some All-Stars who haven't yet hit their UFA jackpot, who are like, whoa, are you kidding me? No, I think that's neat. Again, it's not, the league is trying, like bringing back the draft. I mean, I was there at the first ever draft in Ottawa. And is that the one where Phil Kessel went last?
Yeah,
I think?
Phil went last, yeah.
He was so good about the way he took that. And that's, in many ways, thank goodness it was Phil Kessel, because some players could have taken that differently. But, that part is fun. But again, you're trying to re-engineer something that has so little meaning in the grand scheme of things. And the other thing, too, guys, is that, it's a hell of a commitment for these players. Not that they're exerting energy at All-Star Weekend on the ice, but the schedule is such a grind for these guys, and to come here and to pack this in, and it's like, I'll tell you right now, the teams that are the happiest are the ones where most of their players are like, yeah, no thanks, because they want their guys rested.
Yeah, and again, we'll see what comes of it tonight, and as we get closer, again, it'll be more meaningful here because it is in Toronto for sure. But as for what else is going on, like another team, I'll throw them out there. Ottawa does not have an All-Star. I'm sorry. This year they do not have a player that should be knocking, whoever else it's going to be in Toronto, Ottawa, Tampa, whatever. But Jacques Martin has now come out. Is he rolling the clock back to 1997, Pierre? Is he going pre-cap and threatening to restrict ice time? And, I'll believe
what
it when
else
I
are you
see
going
it.
to do, Hayes? What else are you going to do?
But these
Well,
go ahead.
the most dangerous coach is the interim head coach who's 71 years old, who doesn't give a crap because he knows he's not going to be coach next year.
Right.
I mean, not a perfect example, but Dale Hunter coming to coach Washington just for the rest of the year, knowing that he wouldn't stick around, that was dangerous. I mean, that's what this feels like, where Jacques Martin is going to say, what are you going to do to me that I care about? I mean, I'm trying to teach you guys how to play better defensively, and that's my mandate. I'm not around next year to be the head coach of this team, so it's going to be my way or the highway. That's what this absolutely feels like, and he's got the full endorsement of management. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Pierre, there's nothing else you can
he?
do. You're going to watch guys go out there and continuously play the same way, where it's like, I call it playing want to score a goal instead of playing hockey, because that's all they want to do. They just want to score a goal. And they go out there and they're like, where's the puck? I got to find it. No clue about positioning, no clue about the score of the game. They just want to score a goal. And if I was watching that like Jacques is doing, I'd say, sorry, you're going to sit your ass beside me, or you're going to sit upstairs and not even have equipment on. I can't watch it anymore.
And this is, again, who knows how this plays out now. I mean, I do think, honestly, I think Steve Stais has an idea where this needs to go. It's just that he just showed up, right? But this is the example of, you look at Buffalo over the years, Edmonton finally figured it out, although, again, dropped some drama on their fan base early this year. Tanking and getting a bunch of young guys and then saying we're back in about 7 years, boy, there are no guarantees in the National Hockey League. It doesn't work that way, really.
And to think all of your young players are the guys that are going to get it done. Sometimes, and I'm not saying you get reckless, but sometimes you just got to move away from one or two of them and saying, we need something different, because, you can't give the whole group of them time. Like the Chicago Blackhawks won 3 Stanley Cups. That's the extreme example.
Yeah.
But to not even come close to the playoffs year after year, maybe some of these guys can't be in the mix.
And that's why O-Dog, and I'm not professing to say for sure that Detroit's next step of their rebuild is going to necessarily go better than Ottawa or Buffalo, but, I think, people raised eyebrows when Steve Yzerman went out in the last couple of years and added Ben Sherrod and added David Perron and added other veteran players around his young guys. I applauded it, because what he's saying is he knows how tough this league is, and he doesn't want 20 players under the age of 25 running his team. He wants veteran guys around his kids saying, this is what it's like to be a pro every day. We show up to the rink. And again, I'm not saying for sure that the Red Wings at the end of the year are going to be that much better than Ottawa or Buffalo, but to me, there's got to be something to that, to that logic, because someone's going to grab you by the side, a veteran player, and say, dude, like that's not going to work. And I think you're seeing that with Detroit having a decent year.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Martin, and the problem is these guys, they've all been given the keys to the cars, and they all have term, they all have big money, and I'm curious to see how the rest of the year plays out, because they're obviously they're not going to get up off the mat unless something miraculous happens. But
and the idea of pissing the wrong guy off, Hayes.
That's
maybe
what
if
I'm
you
saying.
say Tim Stützle, you're not playing tonight, he goes, call my agent because I'm not playing here anymore.
Right.
And that's when all of a sudden Stais has to step in and say, I can't lose. I can't use this bullet on a coach that's not my guy either. Like obviously they brought in Martin, but it's a complicated game with the salary cap being what it is, contracts being what they are, the player empowerment. Because, Ottawa, they've committed to a lot of these guys. Montreal's committed to guys. Suzuki, Caulfield, they got their deals. They're both good players. But they got their deals.
Well, it's funny, not that the record's not much better, but it feels like the Canadians are doing the culture part better. Like they have older guys with the young guys. I just don't know if their young guys are as good as Ottawa's young guys. That makes any sense.
Right. And also
it's almost a reverse process there in many ways.
And the messaging different too, right? Like the expectations were Montreal is not going to be very good. So when they're not very good, it's like, hey, at least they're giving effort. They're doing this, couple of big wins, couple of win streaks. For Ottawa, it's like, this is our year. We're going to do it. We have rebuild's over, and you're still rebuilding. That's when it can catch you, clearly. But
yeah, and again, I do think that you see a lot of development from some of Montreal's players and their Marty St. Louis. I think those are tangible things that you can point a finger at, saying those are positive developments. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, you can certainly argue the Habs are handling their process better right now. But at the end of the day, you also need the young studs, and do they have enough of them?
We will see. There's another team. I'll throw them in. They don't have an all-star. Like, Montreal should not have an all-star, but they're going to get one. I would assume it's Suzuki.
Just stop it with this.
I'm just saying. I'm just being honest.
I know.
I'm just being honest.
You're adding to the list of you hating on.
It's not
No one
about
cares
hating.
about what
People in Anaheim feel. Again, context on that. That was about the Toronto Sun not caring.
I think you're just mad that I almost swore. You're just mad that Jordan Love wasn't one of the 3 NFC quarterbacks.
Yeah, man, I'm nervous.
That's what that's about.
I'm nervous.
You're coming out swinging. You're mixing up your Packers love with your NHL All-Star. That's what's going on here.
Yeah, I'm nervous. I got to be honest with you, Pierre. It's very reminiscent of Week 18 last year at Lambeau when the Lions went in and knocked the Packers out. But what an opportunity for Jordan Love to prove he can do something that Aaron Rodgers couldn't. They get a win against the Bears Sunday afternoon. It is showtime at Lambeau. Packers on their way to the playoffs, possibly playing the Cowboys down the road.
My quick NFL predictions: Bills beat the Dolphins.
Okay.
Packers beat the Bears. Cowboys
I love
beat
it.
Washington.
Yes.
Cowboys beat Washington.
Wow.
Thank you, Mark.
Wow,
They
went out
better.
on a limb there.
They better.
14-point favorites.
Jeez.
They better crush that team, Pierre. Come on. But I like it. I like your positive
you never
vibes.
crush a divisional rival. Doesn't matter how bad the divisional rival is. There's something about divisional games. You just got to get through it.
You're right. You're right.
Take the points.
Take the points. That's what Pierre's telling us. All right, buddy. Thank you for doing this.
All right, that was awesome, guys. Happy New Year to all of you.
Yeah, you too. There's Pierre LeBrun, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander, in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Yeah, the Bills-Dolphins game flexed to Sunday night. That's the right call.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to be the decision.
I mean,
all day.
And the Bills will know if it's a must-win by that point, too. Because if Jacksonville and Pittsburgh win, then it literally is you win and you win the division, or you lose and you're out.
Amazing.
How is that possible? You're the second seed or you're out.
It's amazing.
Like, do I have that right? I swear I have
right.
that right.
That is exactly right. I was just looking at the scenarios.
Like, how is that possible? Second seed or you're out.
One of those years in the NFL, man. There's just nobody's pulled ahead, right? And everybody's kind of in the middle.
Right.
So many teams on the bubble.
Yeah, and the tiebreakers. I remember talking about that after they blew that game in Philly, where they had that game against the Eagles, and instead of being 7-5, they were 6-6, and Bills fans were like, they've lost the tie breaks.
Oh,
They don't have the tie breaks. It's going to come back to burn
Can you
them.
say that again for me? That Bills Dolphins, you either are second seed or you're out of the playoffs.
So Miami's in. They have clinched. They have 11 wins. But if the Bills beat Miami, they have the tiebreak over the Dolphins to win the division. So the Bills will go 11-6 and will be second seed because they're ahead of Kansas City, who's in the third seed, and ahead of whoever wins the AFC South, which will be the fourth seed. So the Bills, if they beat Miami, are the second seed in the AFC. In other words, 2 home games, a guaranteed home game in the playoffs, but then if you win it, 2 home games in Buffalo. But if Pittsburgh wins in the afternoon and Jacksonville wins in the afternoon and the Bills lose to Miami, they're out of the playoffs. Like, it's absurd. It's
that
absurd.
makes for great watching.
It really does.
Oh,
it really
God.
does. And you know, Dolphin fans are going to be bent out of shape one way or the other because the Bills are going to know their fate. Right. So in other words, if Jacksonville and Pittsburgh wins and then the Bills win, Miami will be like, they knew they had to win. It was more motivating for them.
Well, it will be.
Of course it will be.
Yeah.
But it is somewhat of a psychological advantage to an extent. I guess it could go the other way if you're mentally weak and you're fearful, we lose and we're out. Because the reverse is if Jacksonville loses or Pittsburgh loses, Buffalo knows they're in anyway. But they are playing for something. Second seed, home field, that's big. Like you lose, the Bills could go back to Miami for the divisional or the wild card round, or go to Kansas City.
I mean,
wild card round.
I don't think I've ever seen a season
game.
like this. Dog, have you ever seen a season like this from a team where, like, when they had that 500 moment and Josh Allen was throwing it away, on a regular basis, making bad decisions. Everybody was down on their defense because they had so many injuries. I mean, people had checked out on the Buffalo Bills this season. There was a moment where people were so negative on them, and I got a lot of Bills fans in my life, and people were like, I'm done with this team. I'm done with Josh Allen.
They fired their offensive coordinator. It was a mess there for a while. I've never seen a team swaying from analysis, and we'll talk to Luke about it, where he's like, this team's a disaster, not a playoff team. And then the next week it would be like, maybe these guys are Super Bowl contenders.
I know.
And then it was like, they're garbage, they're missing the playoffs, maybe they win the Super Bowl. The analysis on this team has been fascinating this year. And the X factor is always their quarterback, because that guy looks like and should be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. But then he also can look like a guy that doesn't make the playoffs.
Well, that's why I think this setup is perfect for the Bills, because it encapsulates their whole season.
Yeah.
You can win and get in and then say they can beat anybody in the AFC.
That's right.
Like, I don't love their chances against Baltimore if they have to go there, but they can beat Kansas City. Clearly, they can beat Miami, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, whoever else is going to be in there, Cleveland. They can beat all those teams. But they lose, they could be out, and then saying, how did we not take advantage of what's going on in the NFL this year?
I think if they lose in an ugly somehow fashion, I think they gas that coach.
I don't think he's going anywhere.
I don't think so.
I don't think he's going anywhere.
He's got a lot of support.
Yep.
Got
I don't
a ton
think
of
he's
support
going
in that
anywhere.
organization. Surprisingly to me, I'm with you, Odog. Like,
I said that, I guess.
Now, you're not alone. A lot of people have suggested that. I don't believe he's going anywhere in Buffalo.
Even if this season just fizzles away and it's an ugly ending, he's not going anywhere.
We'll get into it with Luke. Luke's coming up in half an hour. He'll give us that answer. Jay Triano in about an hour. The Raps coming off another win last night. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. I got a lot of fan bases coming at me today.
Anaheim, Montreal, Ottawa.
Yeah. Who else do I have?
Columbus doesn't have an all-star.
Columbus.
Yep.
Yeah. I was rooting against the Americans, so the American World Junior fans, they weren't happy with me.
You took a shot at the Sharks
we were looking
the Sharks,
for an obliteration, though. Shark fans hate your guts.
Yeah, they do.
But be honest, NHL fans, if your team stinks the joint out, unless one guy's got 20 cookies, there's not an all-star.
That's my point. It's not like
give
it's
it a rest.
No one cares about what people in Anaheim feel. So, like someone just wrote in, he goes, "It's pathetic how much you hate the Habs to say they don't deserve an all-star. It's pathetic."
That's wrong. We love the Habs. We love the Habs.
It's not about loving or hating. Yes, Suzuki has 34 points in 37 games, and you're not an all-star. You're not a playoff team. Like, there's only so many guys that can go, is the point. Yes, Suzuki's been good. He has been nowhere close to as good as Kucherov. And Stamkos has had a good statistical year. Obviously, Pasternak has been great. In Toronto, Matthews has got 30 goals in 35 games. William Nylander has 50 points. Like, come on. That's all it is. Believe me, go back and find the tape. When Leo Komarov got voted in, I was like, this is ridiculous. It's embarrassing that Leo Komarov is an all-star. And he was a Maple Leaf.
25 goals or 20 goals or whatever, it's like the one year I went. I was scoring a bunch of goals, and it's like, you know what? This year you get to go to the All-Star game. But for the most part in that locker room, it was Marty Brodeur, it was Patrick Waugh. That's who people want to see at the All-Star game. Even if you're one of those studs that don't have the numbers that year, they deserve to go because that's who people want to see.
Well, exactly. Exactly.
How they didn't go back to 5-on-5, it blows my mind how they put that 3-on-3 circus out there. That is trash, and I don't know who would want to watch that, man. Well, that is nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the All-Star, we'll get to it when it comes and when it arrives, but there's other fish to fry here, right? Like the Raptors looking pretty good, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
Emmanuel Quickley was great last night. And I have a tough time figuring out, like, this is where Twitter throws me off and social media throws me off. Because I read something last night. I'm like, I think that's a real quote, but it might not be. Like, he was speaking afterwards about how Darko was telling him to have fun.
Be himself.
And I'm like, this is the NBA, so I don't want to get caught on, like, am I being, Twittered here? But I think that's probably what happened.
I think that's
what probably happened, because that is Darko Rajakovic's approach.
Oh, yeah.
Go out there, smile on your face, have a good time,
is that
and cook.
Getting a little old for you, Dave? The old have fun and you got to be positive stuff?
Yeah, the stuff you said about Malachi Flynn. Like, Malachi, you're very ugly when you got a long face. I want to see that smile. It's like, What are you talking about?
See,
I'm not ugly.
man.
Like, what are you calling me ugly?
Right.
And it's like, yeah, and this whole thing, like he's going to buy the team dinner if they win 3 in a row, and now they're on the verge of it. And it's just like, and all the players are like rolling their eyes going like,
Dude,
yeah, you're not paying for that. Why is your credit card
First
saying
of all,
Larry
they're not
Tannenbaum?
showing up.
Right.
If that coach off told those guys, I'll meet you at this place for dinner, they tell him to go stuff it. They got other things to do than go out with the coach.
Well,
It's silly.
And he doesn't want that smoke. You want to pay for 30 guys to eat like that? No way.
well, exactly. Today's point, he's not paying for anything.
He says he is.
That's going to be Larry Tan. I mean, he has the money to pay it. He's an NBA coach. They're all making millions.
yeah.
Like
He's
Darko's
also got a
making money.
wife who probably is going to go, what, you spent how much on
Yeah,
dinner?
exactly. Because, that is one thing I would love to see is the players be like, Darko, I'll come to your dinner, but do you understand what's coming with me coming to your dinner?
Right.
I'm getting Appies, and I'm getting the because they're going to be in Napa. That's where they're going. After Sacramento, I believe they're going to Golden State. If they can beat the Kings, where are you going?
Dust off the expensive bottles in the cellar.
Right, exactly. All right, Darko, I'm coming, man. But you better understand, like the most expensive wine in the place.
That's right.
is coming out.
Call
tonight.
Greg Popovich and ask him what they should order.
Right, exactly.
Mr. Vino himself.
Yes, like that. That could be what's happening here. But in the end, quickly, like he played well last night, 5 for 8 from 3. That's what kind of stood out more than anything else. But it went. They were up big, and Memphis started pushing late. But it's a good listen. You hope if you're a Raptors fan, all you want is it to feel a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because it was very dry. It was very difficult to watch, and we have seen that the last couple of games.
Yeah.
So
it's been
at a
great.
minimum, it's certainly a positive from that standpoint.
Oh, Doug, have you ever had a coach do that? Like offer incentives? Like they'll take away things. They'll take away your ice time. They'll take away this and that. They'll suspend you. But have you ever had the opposite where they said, I'll buy you something, fellas, or I'll give you something if you do this?
A great incentive, Paul Maurice walked in the room, and it wasn't the playoffs, or it might have been, but he walked in Montreal and said, if you guys pull this out in the third period, I'll find a problem with that plane on the runway and we'll stay here. And God, it's pathetic. Like pro athletes perk up and we're like, we got to go. Like it was like, come on, guys, come on now. It's like that incentive of staying in Montreal. Guys making millions of dollars, but the idea of one more night in Montreal was a motivator. And I don't think we pulled it off. I don't think we pulled it off.
That plane, it was wheels up an hour after that final buzzer.
That's right.
But Montreal, you can understand why. New York, Vegas, L.A.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could do the reverse. Be like, listen, boys, we're going to Columbus, and we're staying in Columbus. You keep playing like this.
Oh, yeah. We're never leaving Columbus.
Right. You think we're
Well,
flying
as a
out?
coach, it might be part of the strategy, Hayes. If I was a coach on the NHL circuit, I know where they want to stay and where they don't want to stay. If you're playing great, because who would rather stay in a junk city as opposed to getting right to the good one? You want to do it every single time.
Right.
So that would be a motivator I would put on the schedule. You guys want to stay over in L.A. instead of going to somewhere else? We'll stay over in L.A. You get the win. It's very simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, the Raps, they start a long, tough road trip here with a win. That's the one you probably got to get. Memphis hasn't been great this year. Utah hasn't been great. Golden State, man, you see Klay Thompson last night?
Yeah.
Like Klay, it's almost like he's just understood. He's like, I don't have a future here.
No.
Like I'm
Well,
not going to be
what happened
around.
to him as a player, though?
The injuries.
Yeah.
He's never returned the same. Like he basically missed 2 full years.
2 full years. I mean, snaps the knee and snaps the Achilles, and he just hasn't been the same guy. I watch almost all their games. My son's a huge Golden State fan, so he's just not this. Like you're waiting for him to be Klay Thompson, and he occasionally you see a flash of it, but you just don't see it enough.
It's got to be so frustrating for like elite athletes, to be in a position where you realize, like especially a guy like that in a market like that. Like, yes, it's Steph's team. Steph's the poster boy. Steph's one of the 10 greatest players of all time, you could argue. But Splash Brothers was pluralized, and he was the brother.
Yeah.
Dude,
Like, it
he
was him.
right behind him.
He
And
was
I wonder
right there.
I wonder if he wants to walk back his comments. He had a presser this year, and someone said, "Are you concerned about like your future here or anything?" And he looks at him and he goes, "Pfft."
Yeah.
Because I'm Klay Thompson, man. You think I'm worried about anything? He's
Right.
probably a little bit worried about what he's doing now.
Well, that's what I'm saying here. Like, for the longest time, he was the king. It was him and Steph. They were going to finals every year. They were winning championships. He was getting money. He was going to all-star games. He was getting endorsement deals. The Bay Area loved him. And now it's like can't jump, he can't defend, he can't hit shots. The team's not playing him. He's coming off the bench at times. They're not going to pay him. I'm sure the market's like, we're okay without you. That's tough. Like I'm not gonna shed tears for Klay Thompson. The guy's had an incredible career. He's made a lot of money. But we always talk about the human element for the guys like just trying to get started that can't get it going. This is the guy at the end who's realizing like it's over and it's not. He's not the same guy, and his place on the team is not the same anymore. Like that's because that was a pure dynasty. Like that Warriors team was as good as it could get. 73 wins in a season.
Yeah.
And Klay was a massive part of that.
And O-Dog, I think it's funny that, Bob Myers, who was running that team as the GM, he got out this year because I think you talk about the tough decisions to come. How do you dismantle a dynasty? How do you tell Klay Thompson, you were a huge part of this, but now you're not, and we can't give you the deal you want. And
I don't know why that would be so difficult, Dave. I don't understand. It's like, I mentioned the John Tavares stuff coming up when his contract's over. If it's Klay Thompson, it's like, What did you think you were honestly getting a long-term deal of some sort at big-time money after what you've done the last couple of years? But they did squeeze out another championship with him.
Yeah, they did. A couple of years ago they got one.
Yeah, they did do that, but then it's been downhill after that, and it's like, I'm not giving you any more money, man. Sorry. Thank you for everything, and let's make this, or you can make it as ugly as you want, but on our end, it's thank you for everything. There's the door.
I hear you, but the Yankees had it with Jeter. The Lakers had it with Kobe. By the end, it's not about what I'm going to bring you the rest of the way. It's how dare you, considering what I've already brought you.
That's the thing.
And and what ends up happening is it's not the GM that's ruthless. Klay's not talking to the GM.
No.
He's going to the owner and saying, remember when we were golfing 10 years ago and I was your guy and all this and that and you were thanking me for this and that.
And it's also
look me in the
real
eyes,
stones, guys,
would come.
The real stones would come before you got to this point. To sniff this out coming around the corner and moving away from it before you get there. Because then you got nothing on your hands. It's like, I got away from that. I don't have to deal with the ugliness at the end of it. The real shrewd guys can make the transaction beforehand.
Yeah.
And you got a couple years. It's got to be a couple years where you might lose in the first round of the playoffs, and you got to make the assessment. Maybe the winning is done, and I got to get ahead of this so it doesn't get ugly down the road.
Yeah,
that's what a real shrewd sports guy does.
You're 100% right, O-Dog. And I love your cutthroat mentality. Like I think it's the way you've got to be. But guess what happens? A guy named Steph Curry gets involved. A guy named Sidney Crosby. Why did Pittsburgh the Pittsburgh Penguins keep the band together? Because a guy named Sidney Crosby gets involved and says, I want my buddy to hang around. I want my buddy to
Connor McDavid's got buddies that he wanted around.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just the way it works.
Yeah.
And it makes it awfully difficult. But
that is a point that needs to be brought up.
Yeah.
Is Steph.
Yeah.
Right. And like that was a part of the controversy when Draymond was doing what he was doing. People were looking at Steph saying, why don't you control the guy?
Right.
You're the guy that always wants him around.
yeah, but Brian, you just said he can't jump. How could Steph go to bat for a guy that can't jump?
He's his boy. I hear you. I understand that. But he was they're foxhole guys. Steph's sitting there saying,
you talk about being cutthroat. That's what I would do. Steph, come here in the gym for a sec. I want to show you something. Klay, jump for me. And Klay would jump and say, you want to stand up for that guy and want me to bring him back for multi-years at big-time money? He can't jump.
I hear you.
I love the mentality, O-Doug, but I think it gets tough, man. And
it does.
You mix in the owner, you mix in the sentiment, you mix in the banners that are hanging, and it's like it's hard to let go.
Nostalgia gets a lot of guys paid. All right, Luke Wilson coming up in about 15 minutes. Raps back in action in Sacramento tomorrow night. Leafs in action. Northern California, same thing Saturday night. The Leafs are in San Jose. Maybe the Leafs will get in on that dinner. Who knows? Maybe the Raptors win tomorrow night. The Leafs head down to Sacramento and hit the town with Darko.
Wow.
Anything's possible. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, our best bets brought to you by FanDuel later this afternoon. TSN 1050's Leafs lineup. Your chance to win Leaf tickets every week, all season long. Every weekday, we announce a current or former Maple Leaf player. And on Fridays, you have a chance to call in and name the Leaf lineup to win a pair of upcoming Leaf tickets. This week, it's Leafs Sharks, January 9th. Plus, we're throwing in a $250 Vanilla Visa prepaid card with each pair of tickets to make it the ultimate game night. Vanilla Visa prepaid cards are available for purchase at Petro-Canada. Today's player of the day is Patrick Marleau. Patrick Marleau, Leaf alumni, Sharks alumni, Hurricanes alumni. They bought him out, I think, immediately, didn't they? I don't think he's a Canes alumni.
Played for him.
Pittsburgh
Traded
Penguins.
him to Pitt or something.
Yeah, he's a Penguins alumni for sure. Yeah, and a mentor for Matthews and Marner and like Auston Matthews. We'll get into it in the next hour. 30 goals in 35 games is wild. And he could have had 4 or 5 last night. Like the amount of like shot attempts was crazy. Like Jonas tweeted out last night, Matthews had 20 shot attempts last night. Nylander had 15. Tavares had 13. Marner had 13.
Just think about it this way. When you score 30 in 82 games, your GM shakes your hand and says, great year. Think about that.
Yeah.
Like,
great
you
job.
Like, you're a stud.
Yeah.
In 82 games.
Yeah.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
30 and 35. I scored 30 goals 4 times, and every year I'm like, I'm a stud.
Yeah. It's just an unreal season.
It took me 82 games. This guy makes me feel like a pigeon.
Yeah. It's wild.
35.
35. And he's on pace for 68. Like, it's just absurd how good he is at scoring goals. And every time he's on the ice.
He'll go nuts tomorrow night. Like, God
in San
knows
Jose, very well could.
Oh.
Yeah. Like we'll come back. We'll get into Matthews and what is realistic in terms of projections the rest of the way. Luke Wilson coming up in the final hour. Jay Triano coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.